As we draw closer and closer to the launch of Verdansk on April 3rd, there are still many unanswered questions surrounding the map, the update, and the content that we can expect. I've got 7 of the key questions that we're hoping to get more information on. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of my Verdansk coverage when it kicks off in a couple of weeks' time. Will Warzone be back to its best in Verdansk? While we can all sit here and dream of the Season 3 update bringing back the most loved map Warzone has ever had, and with it the perfect storm of game features and timing, it's unlikely that this version of Verdansk will feel exactly the same to the one that launched on March 10th, 2020. We're several Call of Duty games further ahead now, each with their own flavor, strengths, and weaknesses that seemingly influence every version of Warzone that comes with it. This time around, we're operating with Black Ops 6 as the host game, and that comes with several elements that simply weren't present with the original Warzone, with the main element for me being Omni movement. Personally, I'm not a fan of this element that Black Ops 6 has introduced. I don't feel as though the system has enabled the free-flowing movement that it promised during the marketing campaign, and instead it actually presents an extended subset of movements, yes, with elongated animations and interruptions as well. The game might objectively be more fluid as a result of its inclusion, but does that really translate into better and more enjoyable gameplay? I'd argue not, especially with those delays that seem to be baked into the system and still haven't been removed. Some of you will obviously feel different to me, but one thing is for certain, Verdansk is going to play host to this movement system whether you like it or not, drastically changing how it's going to feel versus the original 2020 variant. The teaser trailer itself, whilst not being a true gameplay trailer but instead a cinematic render, does do its best to present an image of Verdansk that, at the very least, looks close to the original. Closed stadium is there, an access code for one of the bunker locations, the inclusion of the older Little Bird model, and even shots of the first gulag, the showers, being shown as well. Add to that a focus on operators wearing more grounded, military-inspired clothing, and you might well think that we're getting a stripped-back, more streamlined approach for Verdansk. But in reality, I don't expect that to be the case. The map is being launched into an era of Call of Duty full of unicorn vomit, these outrageous outfits and garish weapon skins, which ultimately drive insane revenue for Activision. So if you think for a second that the powers that be are going to forego all of that revenue in the name of delivering an OG product, you're sadly mistaken. The trailer is one thing, the real thing is likely to be something different. Will we see a big shift in weapon balance to complement Verdansk's launch? We're going to see 3 weapons from the original Verdansk era return in Season 3 with the launch of the map. The Kilo 141, the CR56 AMAX, and the HDR, 2 assault rifles and a sniper rifle. We already know that Call of Duty loves to massively buff the new weapons added each season to make them the most competitive in the meta, forcing people to shift their loadout preferences to incorporate them, and I don't expect anything different to happen here. They're going to draw on the nostalgic feeling of using those weapons again and deliver, probably, meta-leading stats for the 2 assault rifles, allowing them to dominate at the beginning of Season 3. The sniper, the HDR, I think that's going to be handled a little bit differently from its original form, which, if you remember, was perhaps the greatest sniper you could use in Warzone. Fastest bullet velocity at around 1200 meters per second, a decent rechamber speed, decent ADS speed, and the killer feature, literally, a one-shot headshot at any range. No limit whatsoever. That's how it was at the beginning of Warzone. Now, in today's Warzone climate, we don't have all sniper rifles sitting as one-shot headshots at any range. Developers at the end of the Caldera days introduced a new system whereby some sniper rifles and marksman rifles had their one-shot headshot range restricted to balance that power output against other statistics. So for example, the Kar98 with the right attachments right now has a limited one-shot headshot range of around 85-86 meters. And that's to balance it against its faster rechamber speed, faster movement speed, and faster reload speed. However, I feel as though the HDR will return to Warzone and Verdansk in its former glory with just a couple of tweaks, taking up the position of a true one-shot headshot sniper rifle. My reasoning for this? At the end of the Caldera days, when those limitations were first introduced for sniper rifles, the HDR was one of the few snipers that actually retained its one-shot headshot potential, owing to the fact that it had already a slower movement speed, slower rechamber speed, reload speed, and ADS speed compared to other weapons that had since been added to the game. Another weapon highlighted in the trailer was the M4A1, seen a few times in the hands of operators. I'm expecting that to also receive a significant buff for Season 3 to bring it right up to the top of the pecking order. That means the MW2 gun that is currently available in the Black Ops 6 version of Warzone may well become meta, something we've not seen for a long time. The M4A1 was actually the first meta weapon of Warzone back in 2020. People were pairing it with the RPG as a secondary during those first few weeks. The shake-up of the weapon balance is going to be interesting to watch, seeing just how far developers go to try and deliver that OG feeling that players are clearly craving. And we didn't even mention tacticals, lethals, and perks as well. I'm expecting to see a lot of changes on April 3rd. Will the Ricochet anti-cheat be ready for Verdansk's return? Let's be brutally honest here, Ricochet has been the laughingstock of the gaming world for some time now. The last time I can truly remember it working well was Seasons 1 and 2 of Modern Warfare 3, and that was over a year ago. Since then, and many periods before that, it's been about as effective as a chocolate fireguard. Cheaters plagued the original version of Verdansk, and that situation was the key driver for Call of Duty introducing the Ricochet anti-cheat in the first place, promising to stamp out the bad actors and police the game mode in a more effective manner. However, if recent performance is anything to go by, I think Ricochet is going to have a difficult time convincing even the most ardent and enthusiastic Warzone fans that it's going to be effective against the cheater tidal wave that is sure to swirl up when Verdansk appears again on April 3rd. With it being the most popular Warzone map and it holding so many special memories for players, Verdansk is almost guaranteed to bring back casual and more dedicated players, and this, unfortunately, will also mean a rise in cheater numbers looking to exploit the game, especially early on when the Season 3 patch rolls out. History has shown that with most major updates to Warzone, the Ricochet team is able to put up blockers and create systems that stop cheat software working initially, but often the cheat creators themselves are able to react just as fast and will create workarounds and negate the walls that are being put up to try and stop them. And since Warzone is free to play, cheaters that are banned can very easily create new accounts and start right back up again at a moment's notice. Verdansk had some of the worst cheating problems in gaming history back during 2020 and 2021. So with its return, many cheaters are going to see their own chance to relive their glory days essentially, rage hacking on entire lobbies and ruining matches for everyone else. If Ricochet isn't aggressively updated, we could be right back where we started. For their part, Ricochet has committed to extensive updates to the anti-cheat for Warzone. In a recent blog post, the dev stated that during Season 2, which is active right now, there would be a new client and server-side detection enabled, a major kernel-level driver was being updated, with improvements to security of that driver and new encryption processes, as well as a new tampering detection system going live. And for Season 3, the launch of Verdansk, we would get even more new processes being introduced, including a system to authenticate legit players and target cheaters. Although, as we come to expect from Ricochet, they're not going into any further detail so that cheat developers themselves can't get ahead of the game. Personally, I'm not holding out much hope for Ricochet when Verdansk goes live. I don't know if it's going to be able to handle the levels of cheaters, simply due to the rising player numbers. More players, more cheaters by percentage. But who knows, they might pull off a win and have their situation on lockdown. Let's wait and see. Will Call of Duty's server performance hold up? As with the cheating issue that we just spoke about, a massive rise in player numbers is going to place strain on many of the underlying Warzone systems. Server performance is an area where I feel Call of Duty has made some solid strides recently, but with Verdansk returning, we are likely to see a huge influx of returning players that could overload the servers initially. Laggy gameplay and server disconnects aren't what you want to see, but it could be a very real issue, especially in the first few days. Without significant infrastructure overhauls, we're at threat of seeing the same issues that we've seen for other highly anticipated updates in Warzone's history. With server tick rates still sitting around 20 to 30 Hz, a criminally low rate considering the status of the game, I don't anticipate seeing a great improvement in gameplay responsiveness from the level that we currently deal with, which probably means plenty of ghost bullets, plenty of super bullets, desync and generally unfair gunfights if the servers are having problems. However, that would allow this version of Verdansk to closely match the original. Oh, that's not the type of OG experience you were looking for? Sorry. My bad. I'm now conditioned to a certain experience with Warzone servers. They will wet the bed from time to time, but largely they work okay. As long as we don't see major login and matchmaking issues when Verdansk launches, I think we're going to be fine. Do I wish we were getting 60Hz tick rate servers for a better overall experience? Absolutely. Yes, of course. But I've come to realize that that simply is not going to happen. A smooth launch when it comes to server stability, and I'll consider that a major win for Verdansk and Warzone. Will certain gameplay mechanics be changed for Verdansk, or will Verdansk be changed for them? As I mentioned a little bit earlier, there are several gameplay mechanics that will greatly change how Verdansk is perceived by players when it launches on April 3rd. I've considered a few of them, and I wanted to highlight them as potential issues that will likely already be decided on by the development team. I mean, we're only 2 weeks away, but they're worth highlighting for us players so that we have that in mind when we first play the map. Movement mechanics like Omni movement will no doubt be present on Verdansk, making movement decidedly different from the original back in 2020. However, will the map itself have been tweaked or changed with those extended movement mechanisms in mind? I think I'm right in saying that we now have an overall faster sprint speed, longer tac sprint duration with gameplay elements that even enable it permanently, and faster mantling and climbing. Modern Warfare 2019 favored a slightly more methodical approach to movement, which was reflected in Verdansk's original design. Is Verdansk going to work very well with the current movement set that we have from Black Ops 6? Keep that in mind. The time to kill, or TTK, we experienced at the very beginning of Warzone in 2020 was longer than what it is today. Verdansk itself was designed for it, with a fair few more open spaces and sparsely covered open ground compared to more recent maps like Urzikstan and Al Mazrah. Introducing Black Ops 6's faster, more lethal TTK into a map designed for a slower one could lead to a myriad of issues in gunfights where you're expecting to be able to survive. This could lead to more players being wiped out sooner in matches, rather than them surviving later on into other circles, less of an emphasis on movement-based plays because you're not going to be able to tank damage in the way that you used to, or even a strong meta shift towards positioning being the most critical element in the game. I'd argue positioning is always a strong variable in Battle Royales anyway, but with more lethal TTK, if you're not covered sufficiently or holding high ground, you're going to be on the receiving end of severe pain. Classic POIs like Superstore, ATC, downtown rooftops, promenades, they're all going to be returning in Verdansk, which I cannot wait for. But since Verdansk was taken away from us, we've seen a vast improvement in methods of access within Warzone. I'm talking about the implementation of various zip lines up to rooftops that have now become standard, and the additions of redeploy drones that have massively changed how players are able to gain height and power positions across different maps. Those previous POIs and areas that were considered essential to winning matches if the final circles ended there may no longer be as powerful as they once were. Are we going to see downtown buildings littered with zip lines so you can more easily access them, which takes away their power? Will ATC have more than one route up to the top of it, not counting an aggressive chopper dismount through the side windows? This all remains to be seen. And are vehicles going to be as strong as they were originally on Verdansk? Pretty much since the map was removed back in 2021 with the introduction of Caldera, vehicles were nerfed into the ground and got massively deprioritized in the gameplay loop in favor of redeploy balloons or drones. I was never a fan of this change initially, and it's now robbed us of one of the core features of OG Warzone: rolling around in vehicles to move from point to point, chasing down enemy players and teams, and repositioning closer to the circle collapse later on in games. Personally, I hope we see Verdansk without redeploy drones at all, and the focus is shifted back towards using vehicles to traverse the map and outrun the gas. And with it, I hope all of the vehicles have been overhauled in terms of their handling to make them way more fun to use. It was far more satisfying a gameplay loop fighting it out on the ground with other players versus getting dinked by a sniper, whipping out a balloon and flying away at the speed of light to another rooftop. It just becomes boring. We lost some of that charm, and I hope we get that back on April 3rd. The addition of the old school little bird in the trailer is giving me some of the hope that that's the case. Will Verdansk remain static after Season 3, or will it get updated? If you remember back to Modern Warfare 2019, Verdansk being added became a major story element for the seasonal updates within that game, with various cinematics and changes being applied to the map. Stadium and train station were opened up, the activation of the bunkers, which tied directly into the storyline for Task Force 141, the addition of the train that moved around the map, the metro stations, and even the smaller facelifts and updated little POIs that we got in Seasons 4, 5, and 6, they played a part in Verdansk arguably getting better and better over time. According to renowned Call of Duty leaker Ghost of Hope, Verdansk map updates, both new and returning, are planned throughout the Black Ops 6 seasons, and potentially beyond those seasons, to keep people interested and engaged. The map is not going to stay the same as the OG March 2020 version forever, which is just music to my ears. I've stated multiple times that Season 5 Stadium opening, that was peak Warzone. The mode pretty much started on a downhill trajectory from that point in terms of planning, implementation, and handling. I hope we see the return of some of the bunker storyline, the stadium being opened up in a later season, train station being fleshed out and changed, and other various tweaks and changes to keep gameplay interesting and fresh after such a long time of the map being away from our screens. Will Verdansk truly be a different experience, or will it feel like a relic from the past? This one is really difficult to answer, but you can be sure within a few days, players are gonna know. Those first few drops onto the map in your favorite POIs are going to determine for you if this version of Verdansk is worth your time. Personally, I don't think it's going to be the fix-all solution to Warzone's problems. There are several underlying core issues that need to be addressed before Warzone can actually push forward from this position, and those only come from major upgrades and system overhauls, which are unlikely to occur at this particular point in time. And don't forget, that's no guarantee they get it right. Remember, Infinity Ward tried that with Warzone 2.0. Look how that went down. There's no guarantee at all that the return of Verdansk is going to feel anything more like a quick trip back to 2020, a flash in the pan if you like. But as someone who spent a lot of time playing the original Verdansk with my friends during one of the darkest times in recent years, I do hope it's able to bring back some of the spark and allow me to have fun with Warzone once again. Verdansk is coming back, but there are still so many unanswered questions. Do you think Activision will get it right, or are we in for another Warzone disaster? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more Warzone content. I'll catch you in the next one.